What if I told you that beneath the sands of time, hidden in the ruins of ancient Persia, lie secrets so extraordinary they could rewrite entire chapters of history? This was a civilization that stretched from the glittering palaces of Persepolis to the bustling markets of Babylon, a culture of poets and conquerors, astronomers and warriors, people whose innovations shaped the world we live in today. Yet for all their influence, so much of their story remains wrapped in mystery, waiting to be uncovered one artifact at a time. Picture this, a golden cup etched with symbols no one can fully decipher, a clay tablet preserving the whispers of a long-forgotten rebellion, or a dagger that might have once belonged to a king whose name history nearly erased. These aren't just objects, they're portals, fragments of a past that's more thrilling than any legend. And the deeper you dig, the more you realize these artifacts aren't just relics. They're clues to understanding an empire that mastered everything from architecture to espionage, from poetry to war. That's exactly what we're about to do together, unravel the enigmas of ancient Persia through 30 of its most intriguing artifacts. Each one holds a story, a puzzle, a glimpse into a world where the line between myth and reality blurs. Some will challenge what you thought you knew about history, others might send shivers down your spine, but one thing's certain, by the end of this journey, you'll never look at the ancient world the same way again. So let's step into the shadows of the past and uncover the secrets that have been waiting for us, silent and patient for thousands of years. The very first artifact that pulls us into the heart of ancient Persia's mysteries is neither gold nor jeweled, but a humble cylinder of baked clay, etched with the words of a king who changed the world. The Cyrus Cylinder, discovered in 1879 among the ruins of Babylon, might look unassuming at first glance, but this fragile relic holds a proclamation so revolutionary, historians call it the first declaration of human rights in recorded history. Imagine a conqueror who didn't brutalize the people he defeated, but instead set them free. That's exactly what Cyrus the Great did when he took Babylon in 539 BC. Unlike other rulers of his time, he didn't enslave the population or destroy their temples. The inscriptions on the cylinder detail his decision to send displaced peoples back to their homelands. Jews exiled in Babylon, for instance, were allowed to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their sacred sites. What's even more astonishing is the language Cyrus used. The cylinder speaks of justice, of respecting the gods of all nations, and ruling through cooperation rather than fear. In one passage he declares, "I did not allow anyone to terrorize the land." These weren't empty words. Archaeological evidence shows his policies matched his promises. Temples from Egypt to Mesopotamia bear inscriptions praising Cyrus for his fairness. But here's the twist: scholars still debate whether this was pure idealism or brilliant strategy. By positioning himself as a liberator rather than a tyrant, Cyrus secured loyalty across his sprawling empire. The cylinder wasn't just a moral statement, it was a masterstroke of political propaganda, ensuring stability in a culturally diverse realm. The artifact's legacy stretches far beyond antiquity. In the 1960s, a replica was even placed at the United Nations as a symbol of enduring humanitarian ideals. Yet the original cylinder remains enigmatic. Some of its text is damaged, leaving gaps in our understanding. And while it's often hailed as a charter of human rights, modern historians caution against projecting contemporary values onto ancient texts. Cyrus wasn't a modern democrat, he was a king who understood that tolerance could be a tool of power. Still, the cylinder's very existence shatters stereotypes about ancient conquerors. It forces us to ask, how many other civilizations had philosophies ahead of their time, lost to history because their stories weren't preserved in clay? Moving from the lofty ideals of the Cyrus Cylinder to something far more tangible and dazzling, we come to the Oxus Treasure, a trove of gold and silver that seems to capture the very essence of ancient Persia's grandeur. Discovered in the late 1800s near the banks of the Oxus River, in what's now modern-day Tajikistan, this collection reads like a love letter to the artistic brilliance of the Achaemenid Empire. Picture a riverbank where a local merchant digging in the mud suddenly uncovers a glint of gold. What followed was a rush to recover these treasures before looters could scatter them to the winds. Today, the surviving pieces, many now in the British Museum, offer a mesmerizing glimpse into a world where cultures collided and craftsmanship thrived. What makes the Oxus Treasure so extraordinary isn't just its opulence, but the stories whispered by every intricate detail. Take the famous golden chariot model, no bigger than your hand, yet teeming with lifelike figures. A Persian king receiving dignitaries, their faces alive with expression. Or the armlets adorned with griffins, mythical creatures borrowed from Greek art but reimagined with Persian flair. These weren't just decorations, they were statements. The Achaemenids didn't merely conquer lands, they absorbed their art, their symbols, their genius. A silver drinking horn might showcase Central Asian animal motifs, while a dagger's hilt echoes Mesopotamian designs. This was an empire that celebrated diversity long before the word had modern connotations. But the treasure's real magic lies in what it reveals about trade and power. The Oxus River wasn't just a waterway, it was a bustling highway of commerce, linking Persia to the remote edges of Central Asia. The artifact's mixed influences suggest workshops where Greek, Persian, and nomadic artisans collaborated, likely under royal patronage. Imagine the caravans carrying these luxury goods across deserts and mountains, their very existence proof of the empire's reach, yet mysteries linger. Why were these priceless items buried? Was it a temple offering, a merchant's hidden stash, or treasure lost during a hurried escape? The answers might be lost to time, but each piece still speaks of empires that rose and fell, of artists who transcended borders, and of a world far more interconnected than we often assume. High on a cliff face along an ancient trade route in western Iran, a monumental carving stares defiantly across the centuries, the Behistun Inscription, a towering testament to one king's grip on power and the enduring puzzle of language itself. Carved over 2,500 years ago on the orders of King Darius I, this sprawling bas-relief isn't just art, it's a political manifesto, a historical record, and above all, a linguistic key that would unlock the secrets of an entire civilization. Imagine a sheer limestone wall, over 300 feet above the ground, covered in rows upon rows of meticulously chiseled cuneiform script. The figures depicted are larger than life. Darius himself stands triumphantly with one foot on the chest of a rival, surrounded by 9 rebel kings bound in chains, their defeat forever frozen in stone. What makes this artifact revolutionary isn't just its scale or its brazen propaganda, but the fact that Darius had the same proclamation written in 3 different languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. This trilingual masterpiece would become the ancient world's equivalent of a Rosetta Stone, centuries before the actual Rosetta Stone even existed. When British officer Henry Rawlinson first scaled the cliff in the 1830s to document the inscriptions, he couldn't have known he was holding the key to deciphering cuneiform, the wedge-shaped writing system used across Mesopotamia. The Old Persian portion, with its simpler script, was cracked first, and from there, scholars used it as a decoder ring for the other 2 languages, peeling back layers of forgotten history. Suddenly, names like Cyrus and Nebuchadnezzar weren't just shadows in Greek texts. They emerged as flesh and blood rulers from their own records. But the inscription's content is just as gripping as its linguistic legacy. Darius recounts in vivid detail how he crushed rebellions across the empire, attributing his victories to the divine favor of the Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda. One chilling passage describes a rival king who falsely claimed the throne. "I cut off his nose, ears, and tongue, and I put out one eye," Darius boasts. "He was kept bound at my palace gate, and all the people saw him." This wasn't just history, it was a warning, carved where every traveler passing between Babylon and Ecbatana would see it. Yet amid the brutality, there's surprising nuance. The inscription also lists administrative reforms, showing how Darius stabilized his empire through law as much as force. The Behistun Inscription's greatest irony: while Darius meant it to immortalize his power, time turned it into something else entirely, a bridge between worlds. Because of this cliffside chronicle, we can now read the letters of Babylonian merchants, the prayers of Sumerian priests, and the Epic of Gilgamesh in its original form. Every translated cuneiform tablet owes a debt to this audacious carving, yet mysteries remain. Why did Darius choose such an inaccessible spot? Some suggest it was symbolic, a declaration that his words, like the rock itself, were unshakable. Others think it was practical, no vandal could reach it. Whatever the reason, the inscription endures, a silent sentinel reminding us that even the mightiest empires fade, but words once decoded can echo forever. Rising from the dusty plains of southern Iran, the stone terraces of Persepolis still whisper tales of an empire at the height of its glory, and nowhere is this more vivid than in the magnificent reliefs that climb its staircases and line its walls. These aren't mere decorations, they're frozen moments of imperial spectacle, a visual chronicle of the Achaemenid Empire's reach and sophistication. Imagine standing before the grand staircase of the Apadana Palace, where row after row of intricately carved figures parade endlessly, bearing gifts from every corner of the known world. Medes in peaked hats, Egyptians with lotus blossoms, Babylonians leading bulls, and Bactrians clutching two-humped camels. All rendered with such precision you can almost hear the rustle of their robes and the murmur of foreign tongues. What makes these reliefs extraordinary isn't just their artistry, but what they silently declare about Persian rule. Unlike Assyrian carvings that glorified battlefield slaughters, the Persepolis reliefs celebrate something far more subversive: peaceful submission. Here, conquest isn't shown through violence, but through orderly processions where diverse peoples willingly offer tribute. A Scythian presents a bridled horse, an Armenian carries a vase, an Indian brings ivory, each gift a thread in the empire's tapestry of controlled diversity. The message is clear: the Achaemenids didn't just tolerate difference, they institutionalized it. Even the carving style reflects this blending. The naturalism of Greek sculpture meets the rigidity of Mesopotamian traditions, while the flowing drapery hints at Egyptian influences. It's as if the empire distilled the artistic genius of its subjects into a single visual language. Look closer, and the reliefs reveal deeper layers of meaning. The figures aren't static, they're caught mid-stride, their movement orchestrated to guide viewers toward the king's presence. Notice how the height of the carvings shifts subtly: tribute bearers at eye level, Persian nobles slightly elevated, and the emperor himself looming largest of all. This wasn't just perspective, it was propaganda in stone, a hierarchy carved into the very architecture. Yet for all their political calculation, the reliefs also pulse with life. A lion sinks its teeth into a bull's flank in a timeless symbol of royal power, while servants balance stacks of food for endless feasts. In one corner, a Persian guard adjusts his sword belt with such casual realism you'd swear he might step off the wall. The true marvel: these carvings were once ablaze with color. Traces of pigment still cling to sheltered crevices: sapphire blues, crimson reds, and gold leaf that would have made the entire complex shimmer like a mirage. Modern laser scans even reveal chisel marks so precise, they suggest the work of master artisans brought from conquered lands, their skills harnessed to glorify the empire that absorbed them. But perhaps the most haunting detail is what's missing. When Alexander the Great burned Persepolis in 330 BC, the fire's heat cracked some reliefs, leaving scars that mirror the empire's sudden collapse. Yet the stones endured, their silent procession of tribute-bearers still marching through time, a testament to an empire that for a fleeting moment bound the world together under a single, dazzling vision. Standing alone on the plains of Pasargadae, the tomb of Cyrus the Great cuts a striking silhouette against the Iranian sky, a structure so modest in design yet so monumental in legacy. Unlike the towering pyramids of Egypt or the lavishly decorated mausoleums of later rulers, this simple stone edifice rises just 35 feet high, its 6 broad steps leading to a rectangular chamber topped with a gabled roof. But don't let its austerity fool you. Every line, every proportion of this tomb whispers intentionality. Built around 530 BC from massive white limestone blocks fitted together without mortar, it's a masterpiece of precision engineering with seams so tight even a blade of grass couldn't slip between them. The design is unmistakably Persian, yet scholars have spent centuries debating its inspirations. Some see echoes of Mesopotamian ziggurats in its stepped profile, while others point to Eurasian temples or even the wooden tombs of Central Asian nomads. But Cyrus, ever the unifier, may have distilled these influences into something entirely new, a visual manifesto of his reign's core philosophy, power understated yet unshakable. The tomb's survival is a story in itself. When Alexander the Great stormed through Persia, he ordered the destruction of Persepolis, yet he reportedly spared Cyrus's resting place, even restoring its interior after looters had ransacked it. Later Muslim rulers, usually quick to dismantle pre-Islamic monuments, left it untouched. Some legends claim they mistook it for the tomb of Solomon's mother. Others suggest its sheer dignity commanded respect. Even when the medieval Islamic historian al-Masudi described it in the 10th century, he noted gold and precious stones still adorned the interior, along with Cyrus's sarcophagus and weaponry. Today, only the hollow shell remains, but its endurance speaks volumes. In a land shaken by countless invasions from Macedonians to Arabs to Mongols, this unassuming structure became the one constant, a physical anchor to Persia's foundational identity. Look closer, and the tomb reveals layers of symbolic genius. The 6 steps might represent the Zoroastrian Amsha Spenta, divine emanations of wisdom and righteousness. The solitary chamber's dimensions mirror the proportions of a royal tent, forever freezing Cyrus's legacy between the nomadic roots of his people and the settled grandeur of empire. Most poignant is the ancient Greek historian Arrian's account of the original inscription. "O man, I am Cyrus, son of Cambyses, who founded the Persian Empire and ruled over Asia. Grudge me not this monument." Whether these words were genuine or later embellishment, they capture the tomb's essence, a ruler speaking directly across millennia, disarmingly human despite his mythic status. Perhaps the tomb's greatest legacy lies in how it shaped Persian royal architecture for centuries. The Achaemenids' later tombs at Naksh-e-Rostam abandoned the step design for dramatic cliff-carved facades, but retained the same restrained elegance. Even the Sassanian kings, rising 1,000 years after Cyrus, mimicked its form in their tower-like monuments. In modern times, the tomb became a pilgrimage site for Iran's last Shah, who staged his 2,500-year celebration of monarchy beside it in 1971, a controversial event that, ironically, highlighted how Cyrus's legacy could be claimed by rulers with vastly different ideals. Now the tomb stands guard over an empty plain, its original context lost. Pasargadae's palaces and gardens have crumbled to foundations, leaving Cyrus's memorial oddly isolated. Yet this solitude amplifies its power. While the grandeur of Persepolis shouts, this tomb murmurs a quiet reminder that true influence doesn't need adornment. The man who issued history's first human rights decree chose a resting place that rejected ostentation, trusting the weight of his deeds to echo louder than any golden statue. 2.5 millennia later, as wind whistles through the chamber's empty doorway, one can't help but feel he was right. Among the treasures unearthed from the ruins of Susa, few artifacts capture the playful brilliance of Persian court life, quite like the Rhytons' drinking vessels that blur the line between utility and high art. Picture a golden cup shaped like a snarling lion, its mane meticulously chased with curling tendrils of gold, or a silver horn terminating in the fierce beak of a griffin, wings outstretched as if frozen mid-flight. These weren't mere cups, they were masterpieces of metallurgy designed to astonish as much as to serve wine. When a Persian noble raised a Rhyton at a royal banquet, the liquid wouldn't simply pour, it would emerge from the creature's mouth, transforming a simple act of drinking into a theatrical spectacle. The craftsmanship behind these vessels staggers modern minds. Artisans hammered sheets of gold or silver over wooden molds, then soldered intricate details, every feather, claw, or whisker rendered with near-scientific precision. Some Rhytons combined materials, like the famous ibex-headed vessel from the Louvre, where the animal's curved horns were crafted separately from electrum, a shimmering gold-silver alloy prized in antiquity. The most luxurious examples bore inlays of lapis lazuli from Afghanistan or turquoise from the Hindu Kush, their vibrant blues and greens contrasting with the gleaming metal. But what truly sets Persian Rhytons apart is their dynamism. Unlike static Greek kylixes or Egyptian goblets, these vessels pulsed with life. A drinking horn ending in a horse's head might twist subtly, suggesting movement, while a ram-headed Rhyton's curled horns framed the drinker's face like a ceremonial mask. Behind their beauty lay layers of symbolic meaning. The choice of animals wasn't arbitrary. Lions symbolized royal power, griffins guarded divine secrets, and rams echoed Zoroastrian associations with fertility. When a king drank from a Rhyton shaped like a mythical beast, he wasn't just indulging, he was channeling the creature's attributes, performing his connection to both the natural and supernatural worlds. Even the act of drinking held ritual significance. Persian feasts weren't raucous affairs, they were carefully choreographed displays of hierarchy. A Rhyton's design ensured wine flowed only when tilted perfectly, a subtle test of the drinker's sobriety and composure in an empire where excess was seen as a threat to order. The Susa Rhytons also whisper of Persia's cosmopolitan soul. Excavations revealed vessels blending Greek anatomical accuracy with Mesopotamian decorative motifs, while others bore traces of Central Asian animal-style art. This wasn't cultural appropriation, but alchemy, the empire's ability to absorb influences and transmute them into something distinctly Persian. Archaeologists even found Rhytons in the ruins of palaces destroyed by Alexander, their crushed forms preserving impressions of the final, frantic moments before the flames took them. Today, these survivors stand as glittering paradoxes, objects of elite indulgence that somehow humanize their owners, reminding us that even history's most formidable rulers appreciated beauty, wit, and the occasional theatrical flourish at dinner time. Few objects capture the ruthless efficiency of the Achaemenid Empire like the gold daric, a coin so reliable it became the dollar of the ancient world. Under Darius I's reign, Persia didn't just mint currency, it engineered an economic revolution. Picture a small, thick disk of pure gold, barely larger than a modern penny, struck with the image of a king in full regalia kneeling with bow and spear. This wasn't random iconography, every detail whispered power. The archer's pose mirrored royal inscriptions declaring Darius a good bowman on foot and on horseback, while the weapon itself symbolized both martial prowess and divine favor. The bow was sacred to the Zoroastrian pantheon. Standardization was the daric's true genius. Unlike the irregular lumps of electrum used in Lydia or the varying weights of Mesopotamian shekels, Persian coins were uniform to a fault. Struck at royal mints from Sardis to Bactria, each daric weighed exactly 8.35 grams, guaranteed by the king's authority. Merchants from the Nile to the Indus knew they could trust its purity, a radical concept in an era when every city-state issued its own suspect currency. The economic ripple effects were staggering. Trade caravans no longer needed scales or assaying tools. Transactions that once took hours now required a glance. Tax collection became streamlined, funding Persia's vast infrastructure projects. Even the Greek historian Herodotus, no fan of Persia, admitted grudgingly that darics flowed like water across borders. But these coins were more than economic tools, they were miniature billboards for imperial ideology. The absence of text is telling. In a multilingual empire, images transcended language barriers. A subject in Egypt and a satrap in Afghanistan both saw the same unambiguous message. Wealth flowed from the king's grace. The reverse side's crude punchmark, often overlooked, was equally strategic. Unlike Greek coins that featured gods or city emblems, Persian coinage kept the focus relentlessly on monarchy. Even the choice of gold over silver spoke volumes, while Athens' famous owls circulated widely. Darics were deliberately high denomination, used mostly by elites and mercenaries. This created a two-tiered system, gold for imperial business, silver for local markets, ensuring the crown controlled bulk wealth. The daric's legacy outlasted the empire itself. When Alexander conquered Persia, he kept the weight standard intact, merely replacing the archer with his own likeness. Centuries later, Roman emperors still measured their auray against the daric's benchmark. Yet for all its influence, the coin hides tantalizing mysteries. Why did Darius avoid putting his name on them, unlike contemporary rulers? Some suggest it emphasized the office over the individual, a warning that the system would endure beyond any one king. Others point to practicality. Unnamed coins wouldn't need reminting after regime changes. Whatever the reasoning, the daric endures as a silent witness to an empire that understood something profound. True conquest isn't just of land, but of habits, trust, and the very scales by which people measure value. Hidden beneath the ruins of Ecbatana's ancient palace lies an artifact so small it fits in the palm of your hand, yet so potent it helped hold an empire together. The Ecbatana gold tablet, barely larger than a credit card, bears a simple inscription in Old Persian cuneiform: Darius the Great King. No grand declarations, no lists of conquests, just a name hammered into soft gold with deliberate precision. But this unassuming object was far more than a royal autograph. It was a cornerstone of power, literally and symbolically. Archaeologists found it embedded in the foundations of a monumental structure, placed there during construction as a foundation deposit, a practice stretching back to Mesopotamia's earliest ziggurats. These ritual objects served as both divine petitions and political billboards, announcing to gods and future generations alike, "This land bears my mark." What's fascinating is how Darius adapted an ancient tradition for Persian needs. Earlier Mesopotamian rulers often buried elaborate plaques detailing their building projects, but Darius opted for minimalist elegance. The tablet's compact size and standardized inscription suggest mass production. Multiple copies likely lay buried across the empire's key sites. This wasn't just ceremony, it was bureaucratic genius. By saturating his realm with these golden seals, Darius created a physical network of legitimacy. Every tablet functioned like a royal signature on a deed, binding distant cities to the crown's authority. The choice of material was equally strategic. Gold doesn't corrode, ensuring his name would outlast the structures it consecrated. Even if rebels toppled his palaces, the tablets would endure underground, waiting to testify for centuries about who truly owned the land. The tablet's language reveals another layer of Persian statecraft. Unlike the trilingual boasts at Behistun, this inscription uses only Old Persian, a deliberate nod to the empire's core identity. But there's a subtle power in that simplicity. No translations were needed because the message wasn't for subjects, it was directed at the gods themselves. Zoroastrian tradition held that such foundation offerings ensured divine protection over buildings and their builders. By fusing this spiritual act with political theater, Darius didn't just claim territory, he sanctified it. Modern builders still bury time capsules in cornerstones, but imagine the psychological impact of knowing your ruler had literally woven his name into the earth beneath your feet. Yet the tablet's greatest intrigue lies in what it doesn't say. No dates, no parentage, no titles beyond Great King, a stark contrast to the bombastic epithets favored by Egyptian pharaohs or Assyrian rulers. This restraint speaks volumes about Achaemenid confidence. Darius didn't need to list achievements, his name alone carried weight. The tablet's very existence reinforced a revolutionary idea, that legitimacy could be systematized, standardized, and replicated across thousands of miles. Later kings would expand on this, but the Apadana tablet remains the blueprint, a golden seed from which imperial ideology grew. Today, it sits quietly in a museum case, easy to overlook amid flashier treasures. But hold it to the light, and you'll catch glimpses of an empire's invisible architecture, the careful mechanisms that turned conquest into permanence. Buried beneath Siberian ice for over 2,500 years, the Persic carpet emerges as one of history's most exquisite surprises, a Persian masterpiece preserved in a frozen tomb far from its homeland. When Soviet archaeologists unearthed it from a Scythian burial mound in 1949, the vibrant reds and golds of its wool fibers still blazed with life, untouched by time. Measuring roughly 6 feet square, this isn't just the world's oldest intact carpet. It's a portal into the astonishing reach of Persian craftsmanship. Every inch tells a story of technical mastery, with 360 symmetrical knots per square inch, a density rivaling modern luxury rugs. The precision is staggering, each intersection mathematically perfect, suggesting generations of weavers honing their art long before the loom's invention was credited to medieval times. The motifs woven into the carpet's border are a visual symphony of Persian identity. Rows of majestic stags stride alongside griffins, their stylized forms echoing the animal art of Achaemenid reliefs. At the center, a grid of rosettes mirrors the decorative schemes of Persepolis' palaces, while the intricate horsemen in the outer bands could be lifted straight from a Persian noble's tapestry. But here's the twist. This artifact wasn't found in Susa or Pasargadae. It lay curled in a Scythian chieftain's burial in the Altai Mountains, nearly 2,000 miles northeast of Persia's heartland. That staggering distance rewrites what we know about ancient trade. How did this treasure reach Siberia? The answer lies in the nomadic networks threading Eurasia. The Scythians, fierce horsemen who both clashed and traded with Persia, clearly prized Persian goods enough to haul them across snowbound passes. Some scholars argue the carpet was a diplomatic gift, a luxury offering to secure alliances along the empire's restless northern frontier. Others point to war booty plundered during raids into Persian territory. But the most compelling theory suggests a thriving marketplace of ideas and goods stretching from the Caspian to the Yenisei River. Persian merchants or their middlemen likely transported such treasures along routes that would later be called the Silk Road, centuries before silk dominated the trade. Beyond its beauty, the carpet's very fibers hold clues. Analysis reveals dyes from madder root and indigo materials Persia imported from as far as India and Egypt. The wool's quality indicates flocks bred for luxury textiles, not just survival. Even the color palette carries meaning. The dominant deep red, extracted from crushed insects, was a status symbol reserved for elites. This wasn't just flooring, it was a mobile declaration of wealth and power, something a nomadic leader could roll out to transform any yurt into a throne room. The Persic carpet's survival is a miracle of climate. Frozen in permafrost, it avoided the decay that claimed countless other textiles. Yet its true legacy isn't just preservation, it's proof that Persia's cultural influence pulsed along trails far beyond its official borders. In those knotted threads, we see an empire that didn't just conquer but captivated, turning even its rivals into eager consumers of Persian taste. Today, as modern weavers struggle to replicate its techniques, the carpet stands as a humbling reminder. Some secrets of the ancient loom remain as elusive as the paths this artifact once traveled to reach its frozen grave. Deep in the ruins of Susa, archaeologists unearthed something almost unheard of in Persian art. A life-sized statue of Darius I, carved not in the empire's usual style, but with the unmistakable stamp of Egypt. This isn't just a portrait in stone, it's a political statement frozen in granite. Standing over 8 feet tall, the figure shows Darius in the classic Egyptian striding pose, 1 foot forward, arms rigid at his sides. His attire fuses cultures, the Persian royal robe draped over his shoulders, but the Nemes headdress, that striped cloth worn by pharaohs, framing his face. Even the base, inscribed with hieroglyphs proclaiming him King of Upper and Lower Egypt, feels like a deliberate performance. Yet the face is undeniably Persian, with its carefully curled beard and almond-shaped eyes, a blend of conqueror and assimilator in a single figure. The statue's hybrid nature reveals how deeply Persia understood the power of visual propaganda. After Cambyses' Roman II conquered Egypt in 525 BC, the Achaemenids faced a dilemma: how to rule a civilization obsessed with divine kingship without abandoning their own traditions. Darius's solution was ingenious. By commissioning statues in Egyptian style but with Persian features, he signaled respect for local customs while asserting his authority. The hieroglyphic inscriptions take this further. They don't just name Darius as ruler, but as the legitimate heir to Egyptian gods. One passage describes him as beloved of Ptah, the creator deity of Memphis, while another shows him making offerings to the falcon-headed Horus. This wasn't mere flattery, it was a masterclass in soft power, but the statue's true significance lies in its material. The granite isn't local, it was quarried from Aswan, over 600 miles up the Nile. Transporting such a massive block would have required barges, sledges, and sheer manpower, a logistical feat only possible with Egyptian cooperation. This suggests Darius didn't just impose his rule, he enlisted local elites and craftsmen in his own glorification. The chisel marks even hint at Egyptian artisans working alongside Persian overseers, their techniques blending seamlessly. What's equally fascinating is what's missing. Unlike Egyptian pharaohs who littered the Nile Valley with their statues, Darius seems to have limited such commissions. This rarity implies the statue wasn't just about ego, but strategic messaging, perhaps placed at Susa, a crossroads of the empire, to impress foreign delegations. The hybrid style would have whispered to visitors, here is a king who adapts without surrendering his core identity. The statue's survival is itself a miracle. Most Persian art was destroyed by Alexander's forces, and Egyptian-style statues of foreign rulers were often defaced. That this one endured, even fragmented, feels symbolic. The cracks where the head rejoined the body after centuries of separation mirror the cultural fusion. It represents a king who was both Persian and pharaoh, conqueror and custodian, his legacy as layered as the stone from which he was carved. Carved into the sheer rock face of Mount Alvand near Hamadan, the Ganjnameh inscriptions command attention not just for their grandeur, but for their impossible location towering above a rushing mountain stream, their words etched where few could ever reach. These twin texts, commissioned by Darius I and his son Xerxes, aren't mere royal graffiti. They're bulletins from the pinnacle of Persian power, designed to awe both mortals and gods. The higher inscription belongs to Darius, its cuneiform script crisply declaring his lineage and accomplishments, while Xerxes' slightly lower panel mirrors his father's words almost verbatim, a symbolic passing of the torch frozen in stone. What's extraordinary is how these proclamations weaponize landscape. Unlike the Behistun carvings meant for travelers to see, the Ganjnameh texts face a near vertical gorge, visible but barely legible from below. This wasn't carelessness, it was theater. The inscriptions loom where the Alvand's meltwater thunders down in spring, transforming the site into a natural amphitheater. Imagine the effect on ancient visitors, the roar of water echoing off the cliffs, sunlight glinting off the gold leaf letters that once filled the carved grooves. the very mountains seeming to amplify the king's voices. The message was clear. Persian rule wasn't just political, it was elemental, as enduring as the bedrock itself. The text's content reveals another layer of genius. Both inscriptions open with the same phrase: "A great God is Ahura Mazda, who created this earth, who created that sky, who created man." This divine preamble grounds royal authority in cosmic order before listing conquests. Darius' panel mentions defeating rebels and lying kings, while Xerxes curiously omits military boasts, perhaps signaling a shift from expansion to consolidation. The choice to write exclusively in Old Persian is equally telling. At Behistun, Darius used 3 languages for broad comprehension. Here, the audience seems targeted Persian nobles making pilgrimages to this sacred landscape where the Zagros Mountains slope toward Mesopotamia. Modern visitors often miss a subtle clue about the inscription's true function. The site's name, Ganjnameh, means treasure book in Persian, a nod to local legends that the carvings were coded maps to hidden Achaemenid gold. While no treasure hoards have been found, the real riches may be symbolic. Nearby excavations revealed altars and fire pits, suggesting this was a ritual space where kings communed with Ahura Mazda. The inscriptions face sunrise, aligning with Zoroastrian light worship. Perhaps their power lay not in being read, but in existing as permanent votives anchoring royal legitimacy to divine forces. The Ganjnameh stones also whisper of a son's reverence. Xerxes could have chosen any site for his proclamation, yet he positioned his words just beneath his father's, close enough that their shadows would merge at midday. This spatial loyalty echoes his famous Deva inscription, where he boasts of completing Darius' unfinished projects. Even the script's smaller size feels intentional, assertive yet deferential, like a crown prince stepping carefully into a giant's footsteps. Today, as tourists trace the weather-worn grooves where gold once gleamed, they're touching more than history. They're touching the DNA of empire, how power in ancient Persia wasn't just taken but theatrically staged, with mountains as its props and eternity as its promised audience. Buried beneath the crumbling walls of an ancient Kurdish fortress, the Ziwi hoard exploded onto the archaeological scene like a time capsule from history's most dazzling crossroads. Discovered in 1947 by a shepherd near the village of Ziwi in northwestern Iran, this collection of gold, silver, and ivory artifacts reads like a visual symphony of the ancient Near East, each piece a note in a melody blending Assyrian precision, Scythian wildness, and Persian sophistication. Picture a golden pectoral adorned with winged bulls straight from the palaces of Nineveh, its edges trimmed with the coiled predators of the Eurasian steppes. Or a silver beaker where Persian artisans etched processions of tribute-bearers beneath friezes of Assyrian palmettes. Even the ivory carvings defy categorization, showing griffins with Greek-inspired musculature yet draped in jewelry copied from Median royalty. This isn't just art, it's alchemy, the moment when 3 great civilizations collided and created something entirely new. The hoard's origins are as mysterious as its craftsmanship. Unearthed from a ruined citadel overlooking the Silk Road's ancestral routes, the artifacts were found scattered, some in a bronze cauldron, others stuffed into crumbling ceramic jars. Was this a royal treasury hidden during some forgotten invasion? A diplomatic cache of gifts exchanged between kings, or perhaps the loot of a nomadic warlord who raided cities from Babylon to Ecbatana? The styles span too wide a geography and timeline for easy answers. A gold belt buckle shows Assyrian soldiers marching in lockstep, while a nearby dagger's hilt explodes with the swirling animal combat scenes beloved by Scythian nomads. Most tantalizing is a small silver plaque depicting a king, but his headdress resembles Persian royalty, yet his profile mirrors Assyrian reliefs. Some scholars suggest he might be Cyaxares, the Median king who toppled Assyria with Babylonian help, only to see his own lands absorbed by Persia's rising star. Zoom in on the details, and the hoard reveals even deeper layers of cultural negotiation. Take the famous gold armlets, their surfaces divided into registers like an Assyrian obelisk, yet instead of war scenes, they show Persian nobles feasting beneath grapevines. It's as if the artist took Assyria's rigid storytelling format and infused it with Persia's love of harmony and abundance. Even the materials tell a story of distant connections. The lapis lazuli likely came from Afghanistan, the ivory from African elephants traded through Phoenician ports, and the amber from Baltic forests thousands of miles north. This was no provincial workshop. Ziwi sat at the intersection of empires, a place where artisans could pick and choose from the greatest artistic traditions of their age. What makes the hoard truly revolutionary is how it reshapes our understanding of cultural exchange. These artifacts don't merely borrow motifs, they reinvent them. A Scythian-style stag, all elongated limbs and antlers, gets reimagined with the anatomical precision of Greek art. Assyrian guardian genii shed their terrifying aspects to become benevolent Persian spirits. The message is clear: the ancient world wasn't a series of walled-off civilizations, but a ferment of ideas where artists riffed on foreign styles as freely as jazz musicians improvise on a melody. Perhaps that's why the Ziwi treasures feel so alive today. They're not relics of a static past, but snapshots of a world in flux, where identity was fluid and beauty was a language everyone spoke, even if in different dialects. Yet the hoard's final mystery remains. Why was it abandoned? The citadel shows signs of fire, but no battle debris. Some speculate the treasures belonged to a governor loyal to the collapsing Assyrian Empire, who hid them as Cyrus's armies advanced. Others imagine a nomadic chieftain who died before retrieving his plunder. Whatever the truth, the artifacts survived not in a museum or tomb, but in the earth itself, waiting to remind us that history's most fascinating stories often lie not at the centers of power, but in the borderlands where cultures collide and create. At the heart of Persepolis, where ambassadors from 23 nations once climbed to kneel before Persian kings, the Apadana Staircase stands as a stone tapestry of imperial theater. Every step is a masterpiece of political storytelling, its walls alive with processions frozen in time, not warriors bearing weapons but diplomats carrying offerings. The sheer scale overwhelms 2 flights of stairs, each over 50 feet wide, flanked by panels where hundreds of figures march in perfect harmony. Notice how the carvings manipulate perspective. Subjects from the empire's farthest corners appear at eye level, their gifts meticulously detailed: Ethiopians presenting ivory, Armenians leading stallions, Babylonians balancing woven baskets. As your gaze rises, so does the social hierarchy. Persian nobles ascend next, their hands respectfully veiled in a gesture of piety, until finally, at the stairway's apex, the king himself looms larger than life, receiving tribute under the watchful emblem of Ahura Mazda. What makes these reliefs revolutionary isn't just their artistry, but their subversion of Near Eastern tradition. Assyrian kings boasted of conquest through graphic battle scenes. Here, submission is shown as voluntary, even celebratory. A Lycian delegate holds a vase with the same pride as a Greek might display an Olympic prize. The message was clear: Achaemenid rule meant inclusion, not erasure. Scholars still debate whether these processions depicted actual Noah's New Year ceremonies or an idealized vision of empire, but the anthropological precision is undeniable. Every costume, hairstyle, and gift matches historical accounts of these cultures. The staircase functioned as a sort of stone United Nations, where diversity was both catalogued and co-opted into Persian supremacy. Engineering the Apadana required more than artistic genius, it demanded control over light and movement. The stairs were designed at a gentle incline, forcing visitors to slow their pace and absorb the carving's propaganda. Sunlight would have originally danced across gold leaf and vibrant paints. Traces of blue and red still linger in sheltered crevices, making the scenes shimmer as if alive. Even the stone itself was calculated limestone blocks from nearby quarries, cut so precisely that not a speck of mortar was needed. This technical perfection mirrored the empire's larger ethos, power presented as effortless harmony. But look closer and you'll spot tantalizing mysteries. Among the orderly rows, one figure stands out, a bearded man in a lamite dress, his hand raised not in submission but what seems like protest. Was this a real dissenter immortalized by some subversive artisan, or perhaps a symbolic warning that even in utopia discord lurks? The stairs also bear scars of Alexander's destruction, charred patches where fire licked at the stone, a stark reminder that all empires, no matter how brilliantly staged, eventually fade to ruin. Yet in their prime, these carvings did more than glorify kings. They offered conquered peoples a stake in the system. To see your ancestors immortalized on Persia's grandest stage wasn't just flattery, it was proof that surrender came with dignity intact. Today, as shadows creep across the reliefs at dusk, the figures seem to stir the rustle of embroidered robes, the murmur of dead languages, the creak of litters bearing gifts for a throne long turned to dust. The staircase endures as both a monument and a mirror reflecting not just Persian might, but the universal human longing to be remembered. Every delegate, every carved fold of fabric whispers the same plea, that the world might know they once walked here in service to something greater than themselves. Beneath the rust-red mountains of northwestern Iran lies a mine that doesn't just yield salt, it coughs up time itself. The Salt Men of Zanjan, discovered in the Cherabod salt mines between 1993 and 2005, are more than mummies. They're accidental time capsules, their skin, hair, and even clothing eerily preserved by the salt's natural antibacterial properties. Picture a miner's pick striking what seems to be a log, only to reveal a human knee jutting from the crystalline wall. One body still clutches a walnut in his hand as if death caught him mid-meal. Another wears leather boots so intact you could almost slip them on today. These aren't ceremonial burials, but snapshots of ordinary laborers frozen in their final moments, offering an unfiltered glimpse into ancient Persia's working class that no royal inscription could ever match. The most famous of these salt men, known simply as Salt Man I, died around 300 BC, his skull crushed likely by a cave-in. His preservation is staggering. A thick beard clings to his face, his woolen trousers still bear the creases of wear, and his tool-laden belt holds an iron knife with a wooden handle that never rotted away. Even his last meal lingers in his stomach, a simple gruel of barley and lentils, the fuel of the common man, but it's the smaller details that truly humanize him. The calluses on his hands mirror those of modern miners, while salt crystals embedded in his wounds suggest he worked injured, perhaps unable to afford time off. This wasn't just a body, it was a biography written in salt and toil. Beyond flesh and bone, the artifacts found with the salt men rewrite assumptions about Persian technology and trade. Their iron tools, remarkably corrosion-free, reveal advanced metallurgy techniques, pickaxes with hardened edges, chisels tapered for precision work, a woolen hood discovered with Salt Man IV, radiocarbon dated to over 2,400 years ago, turned textile history on its head. Its intricate twill weave, previously thought to be a medieval innovation, proves ancient Persians mastered complex loom techniques centuries earlier. Even the walnuts scattered near the bodies hint at extensive trade networks. The nearest walnut groves lay over 150 miles away, evidence that even remote miners enjoyed luxuries from distant valleys. The salt's preservative power extends to darker truths. One young miner's skull shows signs of deliberate trepanation, a crude hole drilled to relieve swelling, suggesting desperate attempts to save him after injury. Another body's twisted posture implies he suffocated slowly in a collapse, his arms still raised protectively over his head. These weren't just workplace accidents, they were industrial tragedies in an empire built on raw human labor. Yet the mine also whispers of unexpected compassion. A skeleton found curled around a broken leg bone, its fracture neatly set and healed, proves some injured workers received care and returned to work, a rare glimpse of pre-modern occupational medicine. What makes the Salt Men uniquely poignant is their anonymity. Unlike kings memorialized in gold and marble, these were nameless laborers, their stories preserved not by design but by geological chance. The salt that stole their lives also granted them immortality, pickling their struggles and small comforts for future generations to witness. Today, as scientists analyze their stomach contents for ancient parasites or study their DNA for clues to Persian ethnic diversity, these accidental mummies remind us that history isn't just written by victors sometimes, it's carved by the picks of ordinary men, then buried in the dark until the earth decides to speak. In the arid valleys of southeastern Iran, a chance discovery by local farmers in 2001 unearthed a controversy that still simmers among archaeologists, the so-called Juroft civilization artifacts. These intricately carved chlorite vessels, etched with scenes of mythical beasts and towering palm trees, emerged from looted graves along the Halil River, their beauty matched only by the storm of debate they ignited. At first glance, the objects seem familiar: vases, cups, and boxes echoing Mesopotamian styles, but look closer and the differences scream for attention. The serpentine designs twist with a fluidity unknown in Sumer, while the recurring motif of a scorpion-man hybrid appears nowhere else in the ancient Near East. Most tantalizing of all are the symbols scratched along some vessels' rims, clusters of geometric shapes some researchers insist represent a previously unknown writing system, one that might predate cuneiform itself. The arguments for Juroft's antiquity hinge on two bold claims. First, the stratigraphy of the few undisturbed sites suggests settlements dating back to the 4th millennium BC, centuries before Ur's ziggurats pierced the sky. Second, the chlorite quarries traceable to nearby mountains show signs of industrial-scale mining, with workshops producing standardized goods for export. French archaeologist Youssef Majidzadeh, who led early excavations, became the theory's most vocal champion. He pointed to parallels between Juroft's art and descriptions of the lost land of Aratta from Sumerian epics, a wealthy kingdom beyond the mountains that traded precious stones and metals. Could these riverbanks have birthed a civilization advanced enough to influence Mesopotamia rather than the other way around? Opponents counter with hard facts of their own. No intact Juroft settlement has been found matching the grandeur implied by the artifacts. The script, if it even is writing, remains undeciphered, with some linguists dismissing it as potter's marks or decorative flourishes. Carbon dating has proven tricky due to contamination from centuries of flooding, and the stylistic similarities to later Elamite and Sumerian works suggest Juroft may have been a brilliant tributary of those cultures rather than a progenitor. The debate grows heated because it strikes at archaeology's foundational narratives, the long-held belief that civilization first sparked between the Tigris and Euphrates before spreading outward. What no one disputes is the artistry. A typical Juroft vase might depict eagles with serpents coiled around their talons, their feathers rendered in microscopic cross-hatching. Others show ritual scenes, figures drinking from communal vessels beneath what could be zodiac symbols, hinting at sophisticated astronomy. The chlorite itself, a soft gray-green stone, was clearly chosen for how it holds detail. Chisel marks suggest artisans used drills and metal tools far earlier than previously believed. Even if Juroft wasn't Mesopotamia's rival, it was clearly a hub of innovation, its craftsmen exporting goods as far as the Indus Valley and Persian Gulf. The real mystery isn't just who made these objects, but why their style vanished so abruptly. By 2500 BC, the chlorite workshops fell silent. Some speculate climate shifts dried up trade routes, others imagine invasions erasing Juroft's identity. Whatever the truth, these artifacts endure as a Rorschach test for historians, a reminder that every new discovery can upend what we thought we knew about humanity's first chapters. Unlike the grand monuments of Egypt or Mesopotamia, Juroft left no towering ruins, just exquisitely carved stones whispering of a culture brilliant enough to imagine scorpion men, yet so fragile its memory nearly dissolved into the Halil River's mud. Among the most dazzling remnants of the Sassanian Empire, their silver banquet plates gleam with scenes so vivid, you can almost hear the thunder of hooves and the twang of bowstrings. These weren't mere tableware, they were propaganda in polished metal, each one a miniature stage where kings performed their power for elite audiences. Picture a heavy silver platter, its surface alive with the drama of a royal hunt. The ruler astride a rearing horse, his bow drawn taut as a leopard lunges toward him, frozen forever in mid-leap. The craftsmanship is staggering, every feather on the arrows, every muscle on the steeds rendered with near photographic precision. But these images weren't just decorative, they were carefully coded messages. In a realm where the king's divine right to rule was inseparable from his martial prowess, hunting scenes symbolized his ability to protect the empire from chaos. The prayer, whether lions, boars, or mythical beasts, stood in for enemies real and imagined, their defeat proof of royal legitimacy. What makes these plates extraordinary is how they blend artistry with political theater. Many were commissioned as diplomatic gifts, carried by envoys to neighboring courts as tangible proof of Sassanian wealth and sophistication. A 6th century plate discovered in modern-day Uzbekistan, for instance, shows King Khosrow Roman II not hunting, but enthroned beneath a canopy, receiving tribute from delegates in distinct regional costumes. The message was unmistakable. Persia's reach extended far beyond its borders. Even the materials whispered of empire, the silver mine from Anatolia or the Hindu Kush. The mercury gilding tracing patterns only fully visible when the plate caught flickering torchlight at banquets. Zoom in and the details reveal deeper layers of meaning. The king's crown isn't generic, it's meticulously accurate to specific reigns, allowing historians to date plates by their headgear. Animals often wear halos, Zoroastrian symbols of divine favor, while stylized vines framing the scenes echo the paradise gardens of Persian poetry. Some plates even play with perspective. A stag might be shown smaller as it flees into the distance, a technique borrowed from Roman art but adapted to Persian storytelling. This wasn't just borrowing, it was cultural alchemy, transforming foreign influences into something distinctly Sassanian. Yet the plates also hint at vulnerabilities beneath the glitter. Later examples reuse earlier designs with lesser skill, suggesting economic strain or lost craftsmanship. Some show hunters without the king, perhaps a noble's attempt to claim royal symbolism for himself. And when the Arab conquest shattered the empire in the 7th century, many plates were melted down for their silver, their artistry reduced to currency. The survivors, scattered from China to Scandinavia, endure as whispers of a court where every feast was also a performance. Every sip of wine taken from a masterpiece that equated kingship with the relentless, radiant pursuit of order over chaos. Carved into the living rock of a mountainside near Kermanshah, the tacky Boston reliefs are more than just stone portraits. They're a sacred theater where kings step into the realm of the divine. Unlike the battle scenes of Persepolis or the bureaucratic records of Behistun, these Sassanian-era carvings depict moments of transcendent intimacy, rulers standing face to face with gods, receiving the very mandate of heaven. The largest panel shows King Khosrow Roman II, his crown glittering with symbolic details, mounted on his legendary warhorse Shabdiz. But it's the smaller, more enigmatic relief that captivates scholars. A scene where the Zoroastrian deity Ahura Mazda and the water goddess Anahita place the royal diadem directly into the hands of Ardashir Roman II. The fluidity of their gestures makes the stone seem to breathe, their drapery rippling as if stirred by celestial winds. Every chisel mark at Tack-e Boston carries political weight. Notice how Ahura Mazda's foot rests atop a defeated Roman emperor, while Anahita, rarely depicted in investiture scenes, balances the composition with her vessel of sacred waters. This wasn't just religious imagery, it was geopolitical chess in stone. By pairing the warrior god with the life-giving goddess, Ardashir claimed dual legitimacy, conqueror and nurturer. The reliefs also reveal Sassanian mastery of artistic illusion. The shallow depth of the carving, barely 6 inches, creates astonishing volume. Muscles strain beneath tunics, horse harnesses clink with implied sound, and the folds of the king's trousers catch imaginary light. This virtuosity wasn't merely decorative, it forced viewers' eyes upward along diagonal lines, mimicking the ascent from earthly power to divine favor. What makes Tacky Boston unique is its sensory richness. The niche containing Khosrow's equestrian portrait functions as a natural amplifier, whispers at the base echo as if the mountain itself speaks. Archaeologists recently discovered traces of lapis lazuli and gold leaf in the recesses of Ardashir's relief, suggesting these scenes once blazed with color, a visual shock against the rust-colored cliff. The site's strategic location confirms its propaganda purpose. Positioned along the Silk Road's Khorasan branch, every caravan passing beneath saw Persian kings framed by sacred fire altars, their authority literally set in stone. Yet the reliefs hold provocative mysteries. Why does Khosrow's horse bear the same crown-like headpiece as the king? Some scholars see this as evidence of the steed's sacred status, while others suspect it's a subtle nod to the legendary bond between Persian rulers and their mounts. Even the weathering patterns tell a story. The lower portions of the relief show more erosion, likely from centuries of pilgrims touching the divine figures in hopes of blessings. The Sassanians may have intended these carvings as eternal proclamations, but time turned them into something more human. A place where the sacred and the tactile intertwined, where empire met individual devotion in the shadow of the Zagros Mountains. Locked away in the vaults of Iran's central bank, the Qajar-era crown jewels shimmer with more than just gemstones. They pulse with the echoes of empires. While these dazzling treasures were assembled between the 18th and early 20th centuries, their designs reach back millennia, weaving ancient Persian motifs into every diamond-studded sword and emerald-laden tiara. Take the Kaini crown, commissioned for Fath Ali Shah Qajar in 1796. Its sunburst peaks and cascading pearls aren't just opulent accents, they're direct descendants of the crowns worn by Sassanian kings, visible in the rock reliefs of Tacky Boston. Even the jewels themselves tell a story of reclaimed legacy. Many stones were pried from the ruins of earlier dynasties, reset not as plunder, but as deliberate acts of cultural revival. The most striking example of this continuity lies in the Nadari throne. Though built for Nader Shah in the 1730s, its golden limbs crawl with motifs borrowed from Persepolis. Griffins with wings outstretched, lotus blossoms unfolding between lions' paws. Every inch proclaims that the Qajars weren't just rulers, they were inheritors, stitching their legitimacy to Persia's deepest traditions, the throne's most provocative detail. Its backrest, embedded with the famed Darya-Yinor diamond. At 182 carats, this pink-hued giant likely once adorned the crown of Cyrus the Great, according to court chroniclers. Whether myth or fact, the association was strategic, tying modern monarchs to the most revered name in Persian history. But the jewel's true genius lies in their multilingual symbolism. The Globe of Jewels, crafted in 1869, maps the Qajar worldview in rubies and sapphires. Continents are outlined in diamonds, while Iran, positioned front and center, shines 3 times larger than its actual size, rendered entirely in emeralds. It's a boast in gem form, Persia as the Axis Mundi, just as the Achaemenids envisioned their empire 2,000 years prior. Even the choice of gemstones carried ancestral weight. Turquoise from Nishapur, used liberally in Qajar regalia, was the same stone that adorned Parthian armor and Safavid mosque domes. its sky blue hue eternally linked to Persian notions of divinity and protection. The jewels also reveal how Persian rulers weaponized splendor against colonial powers. When European envoys scoffed at Qajar claims of ancient sophistication, rulers would parade treasures like the Sun Throne, its surface a tsunami of 26,000 rubies and pearls, knowing no Western monarch could match such concentrated wealth. Yet beneath the dazzle, these objects held quieter rebellions. The Peacock Throne's famous gem-encrusted birds weren't just decorative. Their fanning tails mimicked the Faravaha symbol of Zoroastrianism, a subtle jab at British and Russian pressures to secularize. Today, the collection's survival is itself a miracle. Though the Pahlavi dynasty replaced Qajar regalia with Western-style crowns, they preserved the older pieces as national heritage. When revolution toppled the monarchy in 1979, even the new Islamic Republic recognized these jewels as non-negotiable cultural patrimony. That's the ultimate testament to their power, not as baubles of dead kings, but as vessels of a civilization's unbroken voice. In their glow, you can trace the same visual rhymes that connected Cyrus to Khosrow, Abbas the Great to Nader Shah. The language of light, stone, and symbolism that Persian rulers have spoken for 25 centuries, regardless of who sat on the throne. Found deep within the ruins of Kangavar, the bronze vessels of the Anahita temple shimmer with more than just patina. They ripple with the echoes of sacred waters that once flowed through the heart of Persian spirituality. These ritual bowls, ladles, and ornate libation cups weren't mere ceremonial props. They were conduits to the divine, crafted specifically for worshipping Anahita, the Zoroastrian goddess of fertility, healing, and above all, water's life-giving power. Picture a priestess in flowing white robes lifting one of these vessels during the autumn festival of Abangan, its surface etched with waves and lotus blossoms as she poured offerings into a sacred spring. The very shape of these objects whispered devotion. Wide basins to catch rainfall symbolizing Anahita's generosity, long-spouted ewers mimicking the flow of rivers she personified, and handles shaped like aquatic birds mid-flight, their wings forever frozen in the act of carrying prayers skyward. What makes these artifacts extraordinary is how they embody Zoroastrianism's unique duality, a faith often mischaracterized as purely fire-worshipping, yet equally reverent toward water's purity. The Kangavar vessels were kept in subterranean chambers aligned with natural aquifers, their placement reflecting the belief that groundwater was Anahita's earthly manifestation. Archaeologists found traces of herbs like myrtle and frankincense still clinging to their interiors, remnants of rituals where holy water wasn't just blessed but transformed into a medicinal panacea for pilgrims. The most striking discovery, a set of strainers with impossibly fine mesh designed to remove even invisible impurities, a physical expression of Zoroastrian purity laws that required water to remain uncontaminated, whether for drinking or divine offering. The artistry of these objects reveals a fascinating tension between tradition and innovation. Early Achaemenid-era vessels display rigid geometric patterns, echoing Mesopotamian styles, while later Sassanian examples explode with naturalistic motifs, fish scales, curling vines, even mermaids holding pearl necklaces. This shift mirrors Zoroastrianism's own evolution, from austere reverence for abstract principles to a celebration of creation's tangible beauty. One particularly exquisite bowl, now in the Tehran Museum, shows Anahita herself standing atop a waterfall, surrounded by zodiac signs, evidence that Persian astral beliefs intertwined seamlessly with their theology. Yet the temple vessels also hint at Anahita's paradoxical role in a patriarchal religious structure. Though Zoroastrian texts describe her as a warrior goddess clad in golden mail, riding a chariot pulled by four winds, her rituals were often overseen by priestesses. The discovery of small silver figurines alongside the vessels depicting women holding lotus flowers suggests female devotees played a central role in water ceremonies, a rare sphere of spiritual authority in ancient Persia. This duality resonated beyond religion. When Alexander's troops sacked Persepolis, Greek historians recorded seeing soldiers hesitate before looting Anahita's sanctuaries, awed by the same aquatic imagery their own Aphrodite would later adopt. The true power of these artifacts lies in their quiet rebellion against time. While Zoroastrian fire temples required perpetual tending, the water vessels endured droughts and invasions, their very material bronze alloyed with sacred mercury resisting corrosion as stubbornly as the faith they served. Today, as scholars debate whether Kangavar was truly the Anahita temple, described in medieval texts or a later sanctuary inspired by her cult, the objects themselves remain anchored in certainty. When light hits their undulating surfaces just right, they still seem to flow, whispering of a civilization that saw divinity not just in flames and smoke, but in the restless, whispering depths of springs and rivers. Buried beneath the ashy soil of southeastern Iran lies a city that burned not once, but 3 times, and from its layered ruins emerge some of the most astonishing earthenware artifacts ever discovered. Shah-e-Sukhteh, aptly named the Burnt City, thrived between 3200 and 2800 BC, its potters' crafting vessels that blur the line between utility and pure artistic genius. Among the broken shards and intact jars, one tiny piece stands apart, a goblet painted with 5 sequential images of a leaping goat. When spun, these images create the illusion of motion, making it the world's earliest known animation. This 4,000-year-old predecessor to the flipbook isn't just a charming novelty. It's evidence of a prehistoric society playing with perception in ways we'd only rediscover millennia later. The technical mastery behind these ceramics defies expectations for such an ancient settlement. Potters of Shah-e-Sukhteh weren't merely shaping clay, they were engineering it. Microscopic analysis reveals they tempered their mixtures with crushed straw and sand to prevent cracking during firing, achieving kiln temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. The resulting vessels were so durable, many survived intact despite the city's repeated conflagrations, but it's the surface designs that truly astonish. Delicate ibexes rendered in precise geometric patterns, fish swirling in rhythmic waves, and human figures with expressive postures suggest artists were experimenting with early forms of storytelling. Some pots even bear what appear to be proto-writing clusters of symbols that may represent numerical tallies or clan markings, scratched into the clay before firing. Beyond their aesthetic brilliance, these artifacts whisper secrets about daily life in the burnt city. A large storage jar found in a residential area still contained traces of barley and fish, its interior lined with bitumen to make it watertight, proof that practicality and artistry coexisted seamlessly. Another vessel, shaped like a woman's torso with exaggerated hips, likely held ceremonial liquids, blurring the boundaries between idol and tool. The prevalence of drinking vessels with residue of fermented beverages hints at communal rituals, while tiny, crudely made cups found in workshops suggest even laborers had access to basic pottery. This wasn't a society where art belonged solely to elites. Creativity trickled down to every level. What makes Shah-e-Sukhteh's pottery truly revolutionary is how it challenges our assumptions about prehistoric innovation. The animated goat cup wasn't a one-off experiment. Similar sequential images appear on other vessels, indicating a broader fascination with capturing motion. Archaeologists have even uncovered what might be early attempts at perspective. One bowl depicts a goat standing sideways, its legs carefully overlapped to suggest depth, a technique European Renaissance painters would later claim as their own invention. The color palette, derived from local minerals like ochre and manganese, remained vibrant through centuries of burial, their earthy reds and blacks echoing the surrounding desert landscape. Yet the greatest mystery isn't how these artifacts were made, but why the city's inhabitants abandoned them. The third and final fire that consumed Shah-e-Sukhteh left potter's wheels frozen mid-spin, kilns filled with unfired works, and that animated goblet lying half-buried in ash. Some theorize climate change dried up vital waterways. Others point to evidence of quakes that may have fractured underground aquifers. Whatever the catastrophe, it preserved these clay masterpieces like a prehistoric Pompeii, sealing them until modern archaeologists could marvel at a civilization that 4,000 years before cinema already understood the magic of making drawings dance. Emerging from the rugged valleys of western Iran, the Loristan bronzes stand as some of the ancient world's most mesmerizing puzzles, objects so steeped in mystery that even their creators' identities remain hotly contested. These intricate castings, dating from roughly 1000 to 600 BC, depict a surreal menagerie: griffins with curling serpent tails, ibexes whose horns spiral into celestial crescents, and bearded deities gripping the throats of twin beasts. The bronze's sheer artistry is undeniable. Each piece showcases a mastery of lost wax casting, with textures so finely detailed you can trace the feathers on a bird god's wings or the veins bulging on a lion's legs. But here's where the intrigue deepens. Unlike the state-sponsored art of Persia's great empires, these artifacts surfaced from nomadic graves and hidden mountain shrines, their cultural context as fragmented as the societies that forged them. Were they sacred talismans for Bronze Age shamans, status symbols for warrior elites, or perhaps even early currency in a world where myth and metal held equal value? The most iconic among these bronzes are the so-called Master of Animals, standards, hollow tubes topped with divine figures subduing beasts. At first glance, they resemble ceremonial finials for banners or chariots, yet their hollow interiors suggest another function. Some scholars argue they once held hallucinogenic plants, used in rituals to commune with the spirit world. Others point to their weight distribution, proposing they served as mace heads, transforming spiritual symbols into weapons when needed. A third camp believes they were nomadic totems, portable emblems of tribal identity, planted in the ground to mark sacred spaces during seasonal migrations. The truth might lie in all three theories. In a culture without fixed temples or palaces, objects had to multitask, shifting roles as fluidly as the nomads who carried them across the Zagros Mountains. Then there are the notorious Loristan daggers, their hilts exploding with intertwined creatures. One particularly striking example shows a hero figure straddling two serpents, their bodies morphing into the blade itself. The craftsmanship here isn't just decorative, it's symbolic alchemy. In a land where survival depended on controlling both livestock and predators, these blades may have embodied a primal contract between humanity and the wild, their deadly edges balanced by imagery of harmony. Recent metallurgical studies add another layer, revealing that some daggers contain arsenic-rich alloys, making them harder than ordinary bronze. This wasn't accidental. It implies a guarded technological secret, passed down through generations of smiths who doubled as spiritual intermediaries. Perhaps the most tantalizing bronzes are the miniature idol carriages, tiny chariots pulled by winged bulls or goats, their drivers frozen mid-ritual. Some archaeologists interpret these as literal cult objects, used in divination ceremonies where their movement predicted omens. Others see them as metaphors for the sun's journey, echoing Indo-European myths that later influenced Zoroastrianism. The carriage's wheels often turn freely, a detail that's led to wild speculation. Were they children's toys, portable altars, or even Bronze Age action figures, used to reenact myths around campfires? Without written records, we're left to decode meaning from metal alone. What's clear is that the Loristan bronzes refuse to fit neatly into history's boxes. Their stylistic echoes ripple across cultures: Mesopotamian motifs filtered through Eurasian steppe artistry, with hints of Elamite and even early Persian influence. This isn't borrowing, it's cultural remixing by a people who existed at the crossroads of empires, absorbing and reinventing as they moved. The bronze's very survival is a testament to their makers' ingenuity. Unlike gold or silver, bronze was practical yet precious enough to hide from looters, buried in tombs that guarded their secrets for millennia. Today, as debates rage over whether they represent a distinct Loristan culture or a broader network of mountain tribes, one thing remains certain: these artifacts are more than relics. They're Bronze Age riddles, daring us to separate ritual from utility, legend from history, and the human hand from the gods it sought to embody. Nestled in the heart of Hamadan's ancient Jewish quarter, the tomb of Esther and Mordecai stands as a living bridge between scripture and stone, a place where history and legend intertwine beneath a humble brick dome. Unlike the grand mausoleums of Persian kings, this unassuming shrine draws pilgrims not with gold or marble, but with the power of story. Step inside, and the air hums with whispered prayers in Hebrew and Farsi. The walls lined with centuries-old inscriptions from Jewish travelers who came to honor the courageous queen who saved their ancestors. The architecture itself tells a tale of cultural fusion. The squat, octagonal structure reflects typical Persian tomb towers, yet the interior's faded blue tiles and Hebrew calligraphy echo the synagogues of Baghdad and Isfahan. The biblical book of Esther paints a vivid picture. A Jewish girl named Hadassah, renamed Esther, becomes queen to the Persian king Ahasuerus, often identified as Xerxes I, and with her cousin Mordecai's guidance, thwarts the genocidal plot of the vizier Haman. But here in Hamadan, local traditions add layers to the familiar tale. Persian Jews speak of Esther's tomb as a place of miracles, where oil lamps burned without fuel during times of persecution, and where secret gatherings were held under cover of darkness. The tombstone itself, draped in embroidered cloths, bears inscriptions in square Hebrew script dating back to the 13th century, alongside later additions in Judeo-Persian, a linguistic tapestry mirroring the community's endurance. Archaeologists face a fascinating puzzle. While Jewish tradition firmly places Esther and Mordecai in Susa, modern-day Shush, Hamadan's claim rests on medieval texts like Benjamin of Tudella's 12th century travelogue, which describes a thriving Jewish pilgrimage site here. Some scholars suggest the tomb might belong to a Sassanian-era Jewish queen named Shushandukt, whose story later merged with Esther's. Others point to the site's possible Zoroastrian origins. Its layout resembles a converted fire temple, hinting at how Persian Jews repurposed sacred spaces under Islamic rule. Whatever its origins, the tomb became a sanctuary. During the 1940s, it sheltered Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Europe via Iran, their prayers adding new chapters to its long narrative. The tomb's survival through centuries of upheaval speaks volumes about Persian-Jewish coexistence. Unlike many diaspora communities, Iran's Jews were never wholly exiled. They thrived as doctors, merchants, and even government officials under various dynasties. The Islamic Republic officially recognizes the site, listing it as a national monument, a rare acknowledgement of Jewish heritage in the Muslim world. Yet visits require passing through a military checkpoint, a reminder of the delicate balance this sacred space inhabits between veneration and vigilance. On Purim, when Jews worldwide celebrate Esther's victory, the tomb transforms. Children in colorful costumes reenact the story's dramatic scenes, while elders recite the Megillah scroll in the haunting cantillation of Persian Jewish tradition. The scent of rosewater and cardamom fills the air as families share hava, a sweet confection mentioned in medieval Judeo-Persian poems about the site. It's a living ritual that collapses time, connecting modern worshippers to generations past. Perhaps the tomb's greatest power lies in its duality. To historians, it's an artifact of cultural persistence; to believers, a conduit to the divine; to Iranians of all faiths, a testament to their land's role as an unexpected haven in Jewish memory. The cracks in its plaster walls seem to whisper. Some stories refuse to stay buried, and some heroes, whether historical or mythical, need no golden coffin to be remembered. They live on in the footsteps of those who still come seeking courage, whispering secrets to a queen who might be listening. The sheer brilliance of Achaemenid military engineering comes into sharp focus when examining the remnants of their armor, artifacts that reveal a philosophy of warfare as calculated as it was formidable. Unlike the bronze-plated Greek hoplites, whose panoply prioritized individual strength and stationary phalanx combat, Persian warriors moved with terrifying fluidity, their protection designed for mobility and adaptability across vast terrains. Recent excavations at sites like Decilium have unearthed scales of iron and bronze so finely worked, they shimmer like fish skin when reconstructed. Woven together with leather lacing into lamellar cuirasses, these overlapping plates created a defensive barrier that could deflect arrows while allowing archers to twist and draw their bows with unrestricted motion, an essential feature for an empire whose battlefield dominance relied on projectile warfare. Greek historians like Herodotus scoffed at Persian armor's lightness, failing to grasp its strategic genius. A full set weighed barely half of a Greek cuirass, crucial for soldiers who might march from the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of Afghanistan. The iconic Persian spara shield, a rectangular wall of wicker and leather, could be folded during marches and unfurled into an arrow-deflecting bulwark in minutes. Even their helmets reflected cultural synthesis, the fluted, Phrygian style borrowed from Anatolian designs but adapted with cheek guards that didn't obstruct peripheral vision, vital for cavalry units. The true masterpiece was their tactical layering. Infantrymen wore quilted linen under their scale armor, a material so deceptively strong that tests show it could stop arrows at close range. This combination, soft textile dispersing impact, hard scales redirecting blows, made Persian troops endure where rigid Greek armor failed. At the Battle of Plataea, Spartan survivors recounted how Persian arrows bounced off their bronze plates, only for the exhausted Greeks to collapse under the weight of their own gear during prolonged engagements. Yet the armor's weakness lay in its specialization. Against the disciplined thrust of Greek spears at Thermopylae, the lighter lamella proved less effective in close quarters, a trade-off for an empire that preferred to win battles before melee even began. Modern recreations prove how Persian archers could lose 15 arrows in the time a hoplite covered 50 yards, their armor enabling rapid fire where bulkier foes lumbered. Perhaps the most revealing detail comes not from battlefields but art. Persepolis Reliefs show soldiers' armor decorated with solar motifs and lion crests, symbols of divine favor meant to intimidate as much as protect. This was psychological warfare woven into metal and thread, a reminder that for the Achaemenids, war wasn't just fought with bodies but with minds. Their armor's legacy endured long after their fall. The Parthians and Sassanians would refine these designs into the cataphract knights that later humbled Rome, proving that the true measure of military genius isn't just in surviving battles but in changing how they're fought. Woven into the very fabric of Sassanian power, fragments of royal textiles whisper tales of an empire that dressed its ambitions in silk and gold. Discovered in forgotten tombs and sealed clay jars along the Silk Road, these remnants, some no larger than a postage stamp, reveal patterns so intricate they still dazzle after 14 centuries. One particularly luminous scrap, preserved in the dry sands of eastern Iran, shows a king astride a winged horse, his crown radiating beams of light woven from golden thread. This wasn't just decoration, it was divine rite made tactile, meant to shimmer as the wearer moved, transforming courtiers into living declarations of Sassanian glory. The secrets of these textiles lie in their construction. Sassanian weavers pioneered techniques that bordered on alchemy, threads dyed with Tyrian purple from Phoenician mollusks, patterns woven with a weft twining method so precise, it created reversible images visible from both sides. Their signature simurgh motif, a mythical bird entwined with pomegranate branches, required up to 400 silk threads per inch, a density unmatched until industrial looms. But the real marvel was their secret weapon, a double ikat dyeing process where threads were dyed before weaving to create hypnotically symmetrical designs. This technique, later lost and rediscovered in Renaissance Italy, gave Sassanian silks their hallucinogenic clarity, every feather, every leaf crisply defined, as if painted rather than woven. These fabrics were more than royal vanity, they were instruments of economic warfare. When Sassanian envoys gifted bolts of watered silk to Chinese courts, a fabric so finely ribbed it shimmered like liquid, they weren't just flattering Tang dynasty emperors. They were creating addicts. Chinese records speak of a madness for Persian patterns that drained imperial coffers until Silk Road caravans groaned under the weight of return shipments. The Byzantines proved equally susceptible. Procopius, the 6th century historian, grumbled about Roman nobles wearing Persian dreams into battle, their armor draped in Sassanian textiles that cost more than the weapons beneath. Yet the most subversive trade wasn't in finished silks, but in technology. Fragments found in Xinjiang show Sassanian-style patterns woven with Chinese raw silk, evidence that Persia exported weaving techniques eastward while importing materials, a precursor to modern industrial espionage. Along the empire's western edges, excavated Byzantine church textiles reveal startling imitations of Persian tree of life motifs, their weavers struggling to replicate the Sassanian float weave that gave designs their three-dimensional pop. The imitations always fell short. Without Persia's guarded dye formulas, the colors bled and the gold thread tarnished. What makes these fragments truly revolutionary is their afterlife. When Muslim armies toppled the Sassanians in the 7th century, they didn't burn the textile workshops, they taxed them. The famed Tur-az factories of the Islamic era were direct continuations, their fabrics still bearing Zoroastrian fire altars discreetly rewoven as abstract geometrics. Even the Crusaders played unwitting tributaries, carrying looted Persian textiles back to Europe where they became relics, wrapped around saints' bones in cathedral treasuries. Today, as conservators painstakingly clean these fragments with microscopic lasers, they uncover new layers of ingenuity, silver threads alloyed to resist tarnish, mordants that fixed dyes through centuries of burial, and in one astonishing case, a weave so tight it repelled water like modern Gore-Tex. The ultimate testament to their mastery, a single scorched scrap from a burned palace in Ctesiphon, its pattern still discernible, a king hunting lions, his bow drawn, the beast's jaws forever frozen mid-roar. Fire took the empire, but the cloth refused to forget. Long before the rise of Persia's mighty empires, the clay workshops of ancient Elam were shaping small mysteries that still perplex archaeologists today. The Elamite statuettes, rarely taller than a hand's breadth, emerge from the soil of sites like Susa and Chog-Azanbil with an eerie presence, their almond-shaped eyes and folded hands frozen in silent devotion. These unassuming figures, dating back as early as 3000 BC, predate Cyrus the Great's unification of Persia by millennia, offering a rare window into the spiritual world of one of the Near East's most enigmatic civilizations. Unlike the monumental art of later Persian dynasties, these figurines were meant for intimate spaces, their fingerprints still visible in the clay where an artisan pressed life into form. What makes these statuettes so fascinating is their duality. Some depict voluptuous females with exaggerated hips and breasts, their bodies slathered in ochre paint, likely fertility icons tied to Elamite mother goddesses like Kirarisha. Others show bearded males clutching snakes or perched atop bulls, possibly representing shamanistic intermediaries between worlds. The most haunting examples are the so-called ornate figures standing with arms raised in perpetual prayer, their mouths slightly open as if chanting spells across 40 centuries. These weren't mere decorations. Thermal analysis reveals many were deliberately fired at low temperatures, leaving them fragile, suggesting they were ritually broken after use, perhaps to release spiritual energy. The statuette's stylistic evolution maps Elam's shifting identity. Early examples from the 4th millennium BC show Mesopotamian influence, cylindrical bodies and coffee bean eyes reminiscent of Sumerian votives. By the Middle Elamite period, a distinct local style emerges, figures with elongated necks and geometric patterns incised into their skirts, echoing the ziggurats of Dur-Antash. Archaeologists have noted an eerie consistency in their production generations of artisans replicating the same gestures and postures with minor variations, as if bound by sacred templates. Their discovery contexts tell equally compelling stories. At Chogha-Zanbil's ziggurat, statuettes were found buried in foundation boxes alongside bronze weapons and lapis lazuli beads, offerings to sanctify the structure. In domestic settings, they cluster near hearths and thresholds, hinting at household protection rituals. One particularly poignant cache from Susa contained 12 nearly identical female figurines arranged in a circle around a crudely modeled clay bed, a possible healing ritual or prenatal blessing ceremony. The true magic of these artifacts lies in what they don't show. Unlike later Persian art with its royal propaganda, these are the sacred objects of ordinary people, farmers praying for rain, mothers seeking safe childbirth, craftsmen invoking patronage. Their simplicity somehow makes them more relatable. Where the gold of Persepolis awes, these humble clay whispers connect. They remind us that before Persia's imperial splendor, there were countless quiet moments of faith pressed between human fingers and the earth. The crumbling stone channels and sunken basins of Pasargada's gardens might look like mere archaeological footnotes today, but these quiet ruins birthed one of humanity's most enduring ideas: paradise on earth. Unearthed near Cyrus the Great's tomb, these 6th century BC remnants represent the world's earliest surviving example of the Chahar Bog, the Persian quadripartite garden that would later inspire everything from Moorish courtyards to Mughal mausoleums. Picture this: a precise grid of water channels dividing lush plots of cypress trees and flowering pomegranates, their symmetry mirroring the Zoroastrian belief in cosmic order. The engineering was as spiritual as it was practical. Gravity-fed Qanat's subterranean aqueducts carried meltwater from distant mountains to feed the gardens, transforming arid plains into living metaphors for divine benevolence. What makes Pasargada's gardens revolutionary isn't just their age, but their philosophical DNA. The old Persian word paradisa, meaning walled enclosure, passed into Greek as paradeisos, eventually evolving into our modern paradise. This wasn't mere etymology, it reflected a worldview. Cyrus's gardens weren't decorative hobbies but microcosms of the empire itself, controlled yet abundant, diverse yet harmonious. Excavations reveal how carefully they curated flora: myrtles from the Aegean, date palms from Mesopotamia, and roses bred specifically for their fragrance. Each planting was a political statement, showcasing Persia's ability to transplant the treasures of conquered lands and make them thrive. The garden's layout held deeper codes. 4 channels representing the sacred rivers of Zoroastrianism intersected at a central pool, symbolizing the life-giving force of Ahura Mazda. This geometric holiness would resonate across millennia. When Islamic conquerors absorbed Persia centuries later, they adopted the Chahar Bog as the blueprint for paradise in Quranic descriptions, a place where rivers flow beneath shaded pavilions. The Alhambra's courtyards, the Taj Mahal's reflecting pools, even medieval European cloisters all descend from Pasargada's dirt and stone. Yet the most haunting discovery wasn't in the soil but in the silence. Pollen analysis shows sudden shifts in plant species around 530 BC, native drought-resistant shrubs replacing delicate exotics. Some scholars read this as evidence of the empire's unraveling after Cyrus's death, his gardens withering like unkept promises. Others see intentional adaptation, a lesson modern landscapers are only now relearning. That true paradise isn't about dominating nature, but finding the balance between human order and ecological humility. Today, as restorers replant Pasargada's plots using ancient Qanat water, the gardens whisper their quiet rebellion. In a world where paradise has become a tired metaphor for escapism, These ruins remind us of its original radicalism, not a faraway heaven, but an earthly ideal forged in stone and leaf, demanding stewardship, celebrating diversity, and proving that even empires fade, but the urge to carve beauty from dust is timeless. Carved high into the limestone cliffs of western Iran, the Behistun relief of Mithridates Roman II stands as a visual manifesto of Parthian kingship, an audacious fusion of Greek dynamism and Persian imperial grandeur. This towering tableau, etched around 100 BC, shows the Parthian king receiving submission from a defeated rival, their figures frozen in a moment of political theater. At first glance, the scene echoes Achaemenid traditions, the larger-than-life scale of the monarch, the celestial symbols framing his head. But lean closer, and the details betray a fascinating cultural cocktail. The king's drapery swirls with Hellenistic fluidity, his musculature rendered with an anatomical precision borrowed from Greek sculpture, while his stiff frontal pose and the cuneiform inscriptions beneath his feet remain stubbornly Mesopotamian. This wasn't just art, it was a calculated display of dual identity, crafted by a dynasty that ruled at the crossroads of empires. What makes this relief revolutionary is how it weaponizes artistic hybridity. Mithridates Roman II, known as the Great for expanding Parthian power to its zenith, understood that legitimacy required speaking multiple visual languages. The defeated foe kneels not in the stiff profile of Persian reliefs, but in a three-quarter twist straight from Greek victory monuments, a nod to the Hellenistic kingdoms the Parthians had eclipsed. Even the weapons tell a story. The king grips a Hellenistic-style spear, while his attendants carry the distinctive crescent-shaped battle standards of Central Asian horse archers. This was multicultural propaganda, designed to appeal to the empire's diverse subjects, Greek-speaking urban elites, Iranian nobility, and steppe nomads alike. The relief's architectural genius lies in its sightlines. Positioned along the ancient Silk Road route, it forced travelers to crane their necks upward, the figure's eyes carefully angled to meet the viewer's gaze from below, an optical trick borrowed from Athenian temple sculpture. Sunlight would have originally struck the polished limestone at dawn, making the king's image blaze against the cliff like a divine apparition. Yet for all its theatricality, the relief grounds itself in Persian tradition through subtle details. The winged Faravahar symbol hovering above Mithridates' crown ties him to Zoroastrianism's divine mandate, while the cuneiform inscription, though now weathered, proudly lists his ancestral lineage back to Arsaces I, founder of the Parthian dynasty. Modern laser scans reveal even more layers of meaning. The king's crown, once thought to be a generic royal diadem, actually bears tiny etchings of astral symbols: a crescent moon for the Babylonian god Sin, a star for Ishtar, and a solar disk for Mithra. This celestial trifecta wasn't decorative. It declared the Parthian ruler as a harmonizer of faiths, a sovereign for all his empire's gods. Equally telling is what's missing. Unlike Roman or Achaemenid victory reliefs, there's no graphic violence, no trampled enemies. The defeated leader kneels intact, his submission framed as a voluntary act, a distinctly Parthian vision of power as negotiation rather than annihilation. The relief's afterlife is as intriguing as its creation. When the Sassanians toppled the Parthians 3 centuries later, they deliberately left it untouched, perhaps recognizing its utility as a bridge between dynasties. Later Muslim chroniclers, mistaking the figures for legendary hero Faridun, added their own graffiti nearby, weaving the monument into new myths. Today, as wind erosion softens its once crisp lines, the relief endures as a testament to an empire often overshadowed by its predecessors, yet just as adept at turning stone into storytelling. It whispers that cultural fusion isn't weakness but strategy, and that sometimes the most lasting victories aren't won by the sword but by the chisel. High in the Zagros Mountains, where the winds howl through narrow passes, the Kalmakara cave guards a silent testament to desperation and survival. Discovered accidentally by local shepherds in 1989, this hidden chamber yielded a breathtaking trove of Sassanian silver, not ceremonial display pieces, but the hurriedly stashed treasures of nobles fleeing the Arab conquests of the 7th century. Picture the scene: delicate ewers dented from frantic packing, wine bowls stacked inside each other like nesting dolls, and a stunning lobed cup still cradling traces of its last sip of wine, all abandoned in the dark as their owners likely faced slaughter or conversion. These weren't merely hidden valuables, they were a civilization's swan song frozen in metal. What makes these artifacts extraordinary is their intimate connection to history's turning point. Unlike the pristine ceremonial silver of earlier Sassanian kings, the Kalmakara pieces show signs of heavy use: scratches from daily feasts, repairs to snapped handles, even graffiti like markings scratched by servants to track inventory. One wine horn bears a Pahlavi inscription that translates to "property of Yazdandad, may his glory endure," a heartbreaking irony, since Yazdandad's world was crumbling even as he etched those words. Another vessel shows a Christian cross crudely added beside a Zoroastrian fire altar, hinting at the religious ferment of the empire's final days, when survival sometimes meant abandoning old gods. The hoard's artistic brilliance makes its context all the more poignant. A silver platter depicts King Khosrow Roman II legendary hunt, its gilded lions so lifelike their muscles ripple beneath chased silver fur. Yet this same plate was clearly used as collateral in crisis, lone amounts scratched along its rim in Middle Persian, perhaps a noble's failed attempt to raise an army. The craftsmanship still dazzles: grapevines with leaves so thin they're translucent, dancers frozen mid-twist with drapery that seems to flutter, but look closer and you'll find telltale shortcuts. Later pieces use less gold inlay, substitute copper for silver in hidden sections, evidence of an empire running out of time and materials. Most revealing are the hastily added inscriptions. One bowl's elegant court scene is marred by a clumsily engraved plea: "Protect us from the desert wolves." Scholars debate whether this references literal Bedouin raiders or the invading Arab armies sweeping across Persia. Another vessel bears the name Adur-Farobe, a Zoroastrian priestly title, followed by a hurried prayer to the Azota's divine beings to shield the faithful in the mountains. These weren't idle devotions. Radiocarbon dating of beeswax residue in one cup suggests it was used for sacred Hayama rituals just before burial, a final act of defiance against the coming storm. The cave itself became a time capsule. Soil analysis revealed layers of charcoal, not from looters, but from the refugees who apparently camped there briefly, burning scraps of wooden chests for warmth. Among the silver, archaeologists found a child's tiny leather shoe and a broken spindle whorl, mundane items that humanize the tragedy. The hoard's composition tells its own story: no weapons, no coins, just the trappings of a vanishing aristocratic life, carefully wrapped in rotting cloth and sealed with crumbling wax. Today, the Kalmakara treasures endure as both art and elegy. The lobed cup's design influenced early Islamic metalwork, its vine motifs resurfacing in Umayyad palaces. The hunting platter style migrated east, inspiring Tang dynasty artisans in China. But perhaps the most haunting legacy lies in what wasn't saved: the libraries, the temples, the living traditions these silver fragments couldn't preserve. When sunlight strikes their engraved surfaces just right, the shadows pool in the grooves of forgotten inscriptions, letting the lost voices of Sassanian Persia whisper across 13 centuries, "Remember us." Beneath the ruins of Persepolis lie not gold or jewels, but something far more precious: 30,000 tiny clay tablets that whisper the secrets of an empire's beating heart. The Persepolis fortification tablets, unearthed in the 1930s, might look like humble receipts at first glance. Yet these unassuming pieces of inscribed clay, some no larger than a postage stamp, form the most detailed financial records surviving from the Achaemenid Empire. Every crack and wedge-shaped stroke reveals a world where bureaucracy was as finely honed as the swords of the immortals. Imagine warehouse clerks noting down shipments of grain in precise cuneiform, or scribes recording payments to laborers in wine and barley. This wasn't just bookkeeping, it was the lifeblood of history's first superpower, frozen in baked earth. The tablets' true magic lies in their staggering specificity. A typical entry might document 174 quarts of flour issued to Erdabama's workers at the royal estate near Pasargadae, or 398 sheep delivered for the king's table during Noah's celebrations. One even details a payment to a Greek stonemason named Antigonus, proof that Persian rulers imported skilled labor from conquered lands. Such minutiae transformed dusty history into vivid reality. We learn that cooks in the royal kitchens received bonuses for holiday feasts, that female supervisors like Erdabama commanded large staffs, and that workers were paid not in coins, but in rations carefully calibrated by rank and labor intensity. This was a welfare state millennia before the term existed, with the crown providing everything from bread to burial cloth. Language itself becomes a fascinating puzzle. While most tablets are in Elamite, the empire's administrative lingua franca, others mix in Old Persian, Aramaic, and even Greek. Some bear the impressions of cylindrical seals, their intricate designs acting as official signatures. One particularly revealing seal belonged to Parnaca, Darius the Great's treasurer, its image of a lion battling a bull echoing the iconography of Persepolis Reliefs. The tablet's sheer volume suggests an almost obsessive record-keeping culture, where every jar of oil and skein of wool was accounted for across an empire stretching from the Nile to the Indus. But beyond dry logistics, the tablets pulse with human stories. A scribe's shaky handwriting hints at a novice learning the ropes, while a broken tablet re-inscribed with corrections shows bureaucracy's relentless pursuit of accuracy. Some entries read like ancient complaint letters, a worker grumbling about shorted rations, or a vineyard manager pleading for more laborers before harvest. Most poignant are the ration lists for expectant mothers and nursing women, revealing a system that valued reproduction as vital labor. Even animals merited meticulous care. One tablet records the exact fodder allotted to royal steeds, while another details medicinal herbs for ailing oxen. Perhaps the greatest revelation is how these records dismantle stereotypes of ancient empires as crude autocracies. The Achaemenids didn't just extract wealth, they redistributed it with astonishing fairness. Traveling diplomats received provisions based on their home region's dietary customs, while injured workers got temporary disability allowances. The tablets even document incentive pay for projects completed ahead of schedule, a concept modern corporations would recognize. This was an empire that understood efficiency required more than fear. It demanded systems that made participation worthwhile for everyone, from Babylonian accountants to Phrygian muleteers. Yet the tablet's survival is itself a historical irony. They owe their preservation to Alexander the Great's destruction of Persepolis in 330 BC. The fire that ravaged the city's cedar ceilings baked the once damp clay tablets into near indestructibility, much like the Roman eruption that saved Pompeii. For centuries, they lay buried under collapsed walls until archaeologists began piecing together their fragmented narratives. One warehouse tally, one worker's name, one carefully measured ration at a time. Today, as scholars decode more tablets using multispectral imaging, new layers of understanding emerge. Recent scans revealed previously invisible ink annotations in Aramaic likely added during audits, while clay sourcing studies trace some tablets to specific bureaucrats based on their mineral signatures. Each revelation adds brushstrokes to our portrait of an empire where order and compassion weren't contradictions, but the twin pillars of enduring power. In these numbered jars of wine and weighed loaves of bread, we find a truth more enduring than any conqueror's monument. That history isn't just written by kings and battles, but by the countless quiet acts of feeding, building, and counting that truly sustained civilizations. Rising from the dusty plains of southern Iran, the Savastan Palace stands as one of the most enigmatic architectural feats of the Sassanian Empire, a structure so advanced for its time that its true purpose still sparks fierce debate among scholars. Built in the 5th century under the reign of Bahram V, this brick and stone marvel predates many Islamic-era palaces yet possesses a sophistication that feels centuries ahead of its time. Picture a sprawling complex with soaring arched ceilings, domed chambers that seem to float without visible support, and walls precisely angled to catch desert breezes for natural cooling. Unlike the ruined splendor of Persepolis or the fire-blackened halls of Ctesiphon, Savastan remains remarkably intact, its vaulted halls whispering secrets of a civilization that mastered both art and engineering. The palace's design is a masterclass in early Persian architectural innovation. Its central dome, one of the oldest surviving examples in Iran, rests not on heavy pillars but on a system of squinches, gradual transitional arches that distribute weight with mathematical precision. This technique wouldn't become common in Europe until the Renaissance, yet Sassanian builders employed it here with flawless execution. The barrel-vaulted Iwan's monumental arched portals later became a hallmark of Islamic architecture, suggesting Savastan may have been a prototype for everything from Umayyad palaces to Seljuk mosques. Even the brickwork tells a story. Alternating layers of stone and baked clay create shock-absorbing joints, a technique that likely helped the structure survive centuries of earthquakes. But what truly baffles historians is the palace's intended function. The traditional view that it was a royal hunting lodge stems from its isolated location amid game-rich plains, where Bahram V, famed for his love of the chase, might have hosted lavish expeditions. Yet the absence of residential quarters and the presence of a central chamber with intricate acoustics suggest otherwise. Some scholars argue the building was a fire temple, pointing to the alignment of certain chambers with the solstice sun, a feature seen in Zoroastrian shrines. The discovery of ash residues in underground chambers fuels this theory, though skeptics note the lack of typical temple features like eternal flame pits. A third perspective casts Savastan as a ceremonial coronation site. Its layout mirrors descriptions in Sassanian texts of the throne of Jamshid, where new kings received divine mandate. The main hall's acoustics amplify a speaker's voice unnaturally, perhaps intended to make royal pronouncements resonate with supernatural weight. Even the decorative motifs hint at ritual use, carved lotus flowers symbolizing purity, and friezes of mythical beasts like the Simurgh, guardians of royal legitimacy. The palace's afterlife adds another layer of mystery. After the Arab conquest, locals repurposed it as a caravanserai, its halls sheltering Silk Road traders who left graffiti in Pahlavi, Arabic, and even Chinese. This adaptive reuse preserved the structure while obscuring its original purpose. Modern laser scans reveal even deeper secrets, hidden channels beneath the floors that may have carried scented water during ceremonies, and niches where torches could be placed to make the entire facade appear to glow at night. Savastan's greatest legacy may be its defiance of categorization. It stands at the crossroads of sacred and secular, Persian and Proto-Islamic innovation and tradition. Unlike the bombastic reliefs of Persepolis or the gilded excesses of later palaces, its power lies in quiet sophistication, an empire's architectural whisper across the centuries. Whether it hosted kings, priests, or neither, its stones declare one truth unmistakably: the Sassanians didn't just build for their time but for eternity. And with that final artifact, our journey through ancient Persia's hidden wonders comes full circle, from the humble clay of the earliest tablets to the soaring vaults of Savastan. Each relic, whether forged in gold or etched in stone, reveals a civilization far richer, more nuanced, and more enduring than textbooks often capture. They remind us that history isn't just about dates and battles, but about the lingering echoes of those who shaped the world in ways we're still unraveling today. From the revolutionary human rights proclamation of the Cyrus Cylinder to the intricate storytelling woven into the Persian carpet's fibers, these 30 artifacts are far more than relics. They're living bridges to a civilization that shaped the world in ways we're still discovering. Each piece, whether a humble clay tablet or a gilded Sassanian silver plate, reveals a different facet of Persia's genius: its bureaucratic precision, its artistic audacity, its ability to weave diverse cultures into something entirely new. They show us an empire where tolerance was policy long before it became a modern ideal, where engineers calculated vaulted ceilings with the same care as poets composed verses, and where even the smallest drinking vessel could carry the weight of cosmic symbolism. What makes these objects timeless is how they refuse to fit into simplistic narratives. The Behistun Inscription isn't just a king's boast, it's the key that unlocked lost languages. The Oxus Treasure isn't merely gold, it's a snapshot of Silk Road globalization 2 millennia before the term existed, and those salt-preserved miners. They're not just mummies, but witnesses to the human cost behind Persia's monumental achievements. Together, they paint a portrait of a civilization both dazzling and deeply human, where grandeur and grit coexisted in equal measure. Now we'd love to hear your thoughts. Which artifact transported you the most? Was it the animated goat cup that predated cinema by 4,000 years, or perhaps the defiant golden words of the Cyrus Cylinder? Share your favorites in the comments, and if this journey through Persia's hidden stories sparked your curiosity, there's so much more to explore. Pick up a copy of Persian Fire by Tom Holland for a gripping deep dive, or if you're craving adventure, trace these wonders firsthand along Iran's ancient roads where the scent of saffron still hangs in the air, and every crumbling wall whispers secrets waiting to be heard. Remember, history isn't just about dates and dusty artifacts, it's about connections. The next time you see a geometric pattern on a carpet or hear a poem about justice, think of Persia's enduring echo. These 30 objects are just the beginning. Countless more stories lie buried, waiting for the next curious mind to uncover them. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and who knows, you might just stumble upon the next clue that changes how we see